Summer is coming, and you need to get jacked fast. Or maybe you got a wedding coming up, or a vacation. Whatever it is, it's a story as old as time. Maybe you haven't been working out, or maybe you have, but just slacking. But all of a sudden, you get a fire lit under your butt and decide you need to put on some muscle. So what are you going to do? Work out every day for hours and hours? Well, that isn't going to work. So in this video, we're going to show you what does work and go over a list of tips, tricks, and hacks to optimize your training and ensure as much muscle growth as possible. Muscle growth, or muscle hypertrophy, is one of the primary goals a person will have when going to the gym, alongside losing weight and gaining strength. As such, building muscle faster is on everyone's mind when they first head to the gym, but trainees will soon discover an inconvenient truth. Building muscle is a pretty slow process, at least much slower than many expect. Unfortunately, our bodies have decided that gaining fat should be really easy, while building muscle needs a good amount of time and effort. And there's an evolutionary reason for that. Basically, fat acts as energy storage, something you always need. Muscle, on the other hand, is actually more metabolically demanding, meaning your body only wants more muscle if it's absolutely necessary. We know understanding why doesn't make this fact any more convenient, but it is what it is. With that said, your muscle growth can be affected by a range of variables. For example, your training age, intensity, genetics, and nutrition all factor in. With that in mind, the average rate of muscle growth can still vary greatly. For example, in 2005, 585 men were put on a 12-week progressive resistance training plan. When they measured the biceps, the change in size varied from a whopping 55% to a decrease in muscle size of -5%. That is a huge range, and you could fall anywhere on it. Now, within the ton of variables that can affect your muscle growth, there is only one that you have no control over: your genetics. This is good news because it means you have a ton of areas that you can optimize to maximize your muscle growth. If you're not, you're more than likely slowing down your maximum growth. And it's these areas that we're going to discuss in this video. There's no singular action that you can perform to magically double the size of your guns. However, there are plenty of variables that you can control that will each offer an advantage and compound on one another. What this ultimately means is to, quote, double your growth, you're going to need to optimize, and that includes your training, your recovery, nutrition, and supplementation. So it's up to you. You can either sabotage yourself by not optimizing, or you can maximize your growth. First up is nutrition. Nutrition is going to play a huge role in your muscle growth, as it's literally feeding the muscle growth. And let's get some basics out of the way. In order to grow, you're going to need calories, but not too many, as you'll gain a lot of fat as well. For this reason, the general guideline for muscle growth is to get in a 300 to 500 calorie surplus. This is enough to fuel muscle growth while mitigating much fat gain. For example, a study put two groups together to test if you can force feed muscle. In other words, can you eat a ton of food to force muscle growth? The big bulk group ate 600 more calories than the normal bulk group, yet they barely gained any more muscle. What they did gain was a whole lot more fat. So we know simply eating a ton isn't going to help with muscle gain. As you're in a caloric surplus, you have a bit more wiggle room with your macronutrient breakdown as far as calories go. Your macronutrients, also termed macros, are where you get your calories from, and they come in three forms of nutrients which your body requires large portions of. They are protein, fat, and carbs. When deciding what your food should consist of in terms of these macros, follow these rules. For protein, aim to eat 1.6 to 2 grams per kilogram of body weight. Your fat should make up 30% of your calorie intake, and you fill all the rest of your calories with carbs. Simple. Now, assuming you got that covered, let's look at a couple of details to maximize growth with just your protein intake. You want to spread your protein out evenly amongst 4 to 5 meals, making sure each meal has a minimum of 20 grams. This will ensure that you have a steady release of amino acids throughout the day, which could result in more muscle mass. This was demonstrated in a study where total protein intake was spread out across the day in 3 meals. One group had an even protein distribution, while the other got most of their protein in one meal. And the lopsided distribution actually ate more protein too. After 12 weeks of resistance training, the evenly distributed group gained 2.5 kilograms of muscle mass, while the lopsided group gained only 1.8 kilograms. That might not look like a ton, but it'll add up as we go. Next up is sleep. If you're getting proper sleep, you're letting your body go roughly 8 to 12 hours without giving your muscles any fuel. Here's the thing, your muscles don't sleep. This period of time led researchers to ask, what would happen if you ate a large amount of protein right before going to sleep? As it turns out, you grow muscle. A meta-analysis from 2021 concluded that consuming 20 to 40 grams of casein protein 30 minutes before sleep elevates muscle protein synthesis overnight. This resulted in improving recovery and potentially greater muscle size. Another study from 2017 used a pre-sleep shake of 27.5 grams of protein and 15 grams of carbohydrate. They then took part in an 8-week resistance training program along with a group who took no pre-sleep protein drink. The quads of the pre-sleep protein group grew 8.4 centimeters, while the placebo group grew 2.4 centimeters. In addition, the type 2 fibers, also known as fast-twitch muscle fibers of the pre-sleep group, grew basically twice as much as the placebo group. This is really good news for lifters. You see, your body has different size muscle fibers that are distinguished by their role. Type 2 muscle fibers are able to support high amounts of force for quick, powerful movements, things like sprinting and lifting weights. Then there's creatine. If you're not taking creatine, you're doing it wrong. Creatine is by far the most potent compound that has a positive effect on muscle growth, and it's actually the only compound which can literally double your muscle size twice as fast. Take this study from 2017. In it, 2 groups used an 8-week training period. Each variable was the same, except that one group consumed creatine. Their dosing consisted of a 7-day loading with 4 doses of 0.3 grams per kilogram a day. This was then followed by a 7-week maintenance phase of a single dose of 0.03 grams per kilogram per day. 3 areas of the body were measured: upper limbs, lower limbs, and the trunk. Here's a comparison of the increased growth in these parts. Upper body, 7.1% versus 1.6%. That's 4.4 times as much. Lower body, 3.2% versus 0.7%. That's 4.5 times as much. Trunk, 2.1% versus 0.7%. That's 3 times as much. So yeah, if you want muscle twice as fast, start taking creatine. But now that your belly's full, let's look at how you can tweak your training inside the gym to maximize your growth. Let's start by addressing the question we asked in the intro: is working out for hours and hours the best way to get big fast? As it turns out, spending 3 hours in the gym destroying your muscles may not be the best way to go about building muscle. More is better only to an extent. However, you'll cross a threshold where you're not going to see any more results, and in fact, you could actually be doing too much damage to recover from. How much should you do? Well, with all the research we have, it seems as though muscles are optimized with just 10 to 20 sets per week. Therefore, no need to perform 20 types of curls on the same day. So then, how should we train? Bro splits, or training a single body part in a single session once a week, tend to be the go-to training split for those looking to get pumped up. While they obviously work, research actually shows there may be a better option. Studies show that training a muscle 2 times a week is superior to just 1. There may even be benefits to hitting a muscle 3 times a week. However, this likely only pertains to smaller muscles as they need less recovery time. So why is more than once a week better? Well, there are a couple theories. The first is that it allows you to train a muscle with more volume at a higher frequency. When you train a single muscle one day, by the end you're fatigued and just not training as hard. Another reason might have to do with a threshold existing with volume. Once you train a muscle so much in a day, doing more has little or no benefit. Whatever the reason, it seems training once is cutting you short. Therefore, cut the number of exercises in half and train them on 2 different days to stay fresh and maximize adaptations. The next tip is pretty cool and relatively new. You've probably noticed that some exercises are harder at different locations. Some in the long position where the muscle is stretched out, while others in the short position when they're almost flexed. What this new theory says is that using exercises that challenge the muscle in the long position can produce more muscle growth. This will make more sense if we visualize it. So let's compare the overhead triceps extension to the triceps pushdown. In the overhead position, the triceps are stretched farther, meaning in theory, these should produce more growth. And that's exactly what a study in 2023 found out. There, the overhead extension produced 1.5 times more muscle. Another study from 2022 found that preacher curls also produced 1.5 times more growth than incline curls. Next, why is it that eccentric muscle contraction never gets any love? It seems everyone only cares about the concentric. And what are we even talking about? Well, your body has 3 different types of contractions: concentric, eccentric, and isometric. Your concentric contraction is when the muscle is pulling and getting shorter. Think about the up phase of a biceps curl. An isometric contraction occurs when the muscle fibers don't move. holding a limb in place like a wall squat. And finally, the eccentric. The eccentric is when the muscle lengthens, or the going down phase. If you're somebody who just lets the weight drop during the eccentric contraction, you're performing it a disservice. You see, studies have found that the eccentric muscle contraction is able to produce greater force than the concentric, as well as more muscle damage. For example, a meta-analysis from 2017 examined the use of concentric-only and eccentric-only muscle action. They concluded that the eccentric contraction was responsible for a greater increase in muscle growth at 10% versus 6.8%. In fact, it's believed the difference in time spent on the eccentric could partially explain differences in muscle growth when the same number of reps are performed. Now, this of course doesn't mean you should only do the eccentric contraction, but what it does mean is to slow down on the eccentric and lower the weight in a slow and controlled manner. Take 2 to 3 seconds. And while you might just be starting out, if you've been to the gym for any length of time, you have likely heard some bro science that says to use different exercises to hit the muscles from different angles. Well, it turns out your gym buddy is right on this one, and you really should, and it's backed by science. We have one study that actually comes from back in 2000. In it, the researchers discovered that a muscle would develop in a regional specific manner dependent on the exercise and where it exerts stress on the muscle. In other words, you can see different amounts of growth on the same muscle from a single exercise. Only hit a muscle one way, and it'll be lopsided. The author clearly states that no single exercise can maximize the hypertrophic response of all regions of a particular muscle. For maximal hypertrophy of an entire muscle, athletes, particularly bodybuilders, are justified in incorporating various exercises that purportedly stimulate growth in a regional specific manner. Therefore, be sure to use various exercises to hit a muscle. If all you're doing is bench press for the chest, you're gonna miss out on muscle growth. In addition, don't use 2 exercises with similar biomechanics. For example, if you're training chest with 3 exercises, it wouldn't make sense to train bench press, push-ups, and flat bench dumbbell press, as they all have similar motions. Instead, your training should look like bench press, incline dumbbell press, and decline chest fly. This is one reason why we all love the crossover cables so much. No other piece of equipment will allow you to hit a muscle at so many different angles. Another piece of bro science that's 100% legit is to get your pump on. But what the heck does that even mean? Well, if you were to ask a bodybuilder, it would be to perform an exercise with a very light weight with high reps until the muscle is engorged with blood. This blood would then cause the muscle to swell up and look bigger. In the past, though, we didn't fully understand what was going on. Now we do. The pump has even been granted a more scientific term, cell swelling. Doesn't have quite the same ring to it as the pump, but we'll explain what's happening. When we train a muscle, the veins of the muscle will close off while the arteries keep flowing. This ignites a series of events that basically leaves the muscle becoming engorged with blood. At the same time, it results in the accumulation of various metabolites. Originally, we simply thought this was a transient experience with short-term benefits. However, research has shown this to have long-lasting chronic benefits. Basically, this state of engorged muscle creates a highly anabolic environment. As a result, several hypertrophic reactions are believed to be ignited, such as an increase in satellite cell activity and the favoring net protein balance. There are many ways to achieve a pump, but Dr. Brad Schoenfeld provides 3 in what's probably the first study to look at the pump through a scientific lens. 1. Use 2 to 3 sets of high reps, for example 20 or so, with 60 seconds rest. 2. Use 5 to 10 sets of 8 to 12 repetitions with 30 seconds rest. And 3. Use a drop set. That is, perform an exercise until a few reps before failure, decrease the load 25 to 50%, and perform another set. Now, you're not doing this for every exercise. In fact, most of your work should be done using a medium rep range of around 6 to 12. Dr. Brad Schoenfeld sums this up by saying, therefore, individuals seeking maximal hypertrophy should consider dedicating a component of their training sessions toward pump training, ideally after heavier strength work. We want to emphasize the component part of that quote. Don't make this your whole routine. Perform just 1 or 2 pump exercises at the end of every session, hitting 2 different muscles. Now, let's all be honest for a second and have a hard talk. Ask yourself, do you really leave it all on the gym floor every session? Chances are probably not. And that's not a dig, as it's simply human nature. We're all guilty of not giving it our all every single time, which is where a gym buddy can become a huge help. And studies clearly show that unsupervised training leads to lower intensity, lower reps, and lower load selection. In fact, a meta showed that on average, unsupervised trainees will generally pick a load equal to 53% of their 1-rep max and stop as much as 10 reps before failure. Your 1-rep max is the maximum amount of weight you can lift in one time. It's as strong as you get. Therefore, let's pretend your 1-rep max is 100 pounds. 53% is 53 pounds. You might think, sure, but not me, as I've been in the gym long enough. Well, while your ability to push yourself does increase as you train more, it happens to trained individuals as well. A study from 2023 put 36 young resistance-trained men and women on an 8-week training program, half of them supervised and half not. The supervised group improved significantly more in just about every variable tested, including greater muscle growth of the triceps and quads, as well as greater increase in strength. While this doesn't necessarily mean you need a coach, training with a partner could be exactly what you need for more muscle growth faster. And finally, sleep. You probably hear this a lot, but it is true. And it's probably the single most influential behavior you can change for instant results. And that's not hyperbole. Just one night of sleep deprivation can break down protein and increase fat storage. This is thought to be due to a list of factors, but the leading cause is hormone dysregulation. For example, just 1 week of sleep deprivation decreased the testosterone levels of healthy young men by 10 to 15%. So if you're lacking on sleep, you're automatically blunting your body's ability to put on more muscle mass. So now we've shown you a bunch of areas where you could improve your training and tips you can start implementing right now. While we can't promise you'll always build muscle twice as fast, you should see some big differences fairly soon. So to summarize, for your training, 1. Use a split that allows you to hit a muscle twice a week. You can even experiment hitting smaller muscles, triceps and biceps, 3 times a week. 2. Use at least one exercise that trains the muscle in a long state. 3. Use exercises that hit the muscle from different areas. At the same time, stay away from exercises that train the muscle with the same biomechanics in the same session. 4. Slow down your eccentric contraction to 2 to 3 seconds in a controlled manner. 5. Use pump work for 1 to 2 exercises at the end of your program, hitting different muscles. This should be done with smaller isolation exercises, aiming to hit every muscle group once each week. And 6. Be sure to train with intensity. Each set should come within a few reps of failure. If you need help, start training with a friend to push you. For your nutrition, 1. Get in a caloric surplus of 300 to 500 calories. 2. Eat 1.6 to 2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. Have 30% of your total calories from fat, then fill the rest in with carbs. 3. Spread your protein out throughout the day with the minimum feeding being 20 grams. 4. Consider a pre-sleep protein shake of 20 to 40 grams of casein 30 minutes before sleep. And 5. Supplement with creatine using a loading phase of 20 to 25 grams for around 5 days, followed by a single dose of 3 to 5 grams. And last, just sleep more. You literally don't have to do anything. 7 to 9 hours should be enough for most. Now, don't expect to see results right after your first workout. The reality is you will still need time to see some noticeable results. At that same time, the only way to build muscle twice as fast is to get your training honed in from the start. Remember, one late night could throw you off. Therefore, be consistent with these habits. However, if you do implement the information in this video, you should start seeing better results soon.